I think Gary's back.
We're good to go? Good evening, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Helotes City Council. It's May 14th, 2020, and we're underway at 7 p.m. Once again, Councilmember Fredericks is joining us by telephone, and of course the rest of us are here, and we're maintaining our social distancing. We'll start our agenda tonight with the invocation, and that will be Councilmember Buys doing the invocation for us, and then we'll have the pledges to the American and Texas flags. So if you would please stand for those invocation pledges.
Let us give thanks for all the blessings, opportunities, and challenges you have given us. Guide us with your strength and wisdom so we can make the right decisions for all the citizens of Helotes. Now that we are experiencing some very challenging times, we ask that you keep our frontline scientists, medical personnel, grocery and sanitation workers, truck drivers, and all others that are keeping our country moving forward as safe as possible. Our thoughts and prayers also go out to the hardworking men and women who have lost their jobs due to this pandemic. Give them the strength to endure until we reach the end of this very difficult situation. As always, we ask that you keep our first responders not only here, but all over the country safe while they perform their unselfish duties. For those that are not able to be with their family and loved ones because of military service, we pray for your quick and safe return. May we give our best always and be sure of your presence with us. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Next on the agenda is a public hearing. We're going to open this public hearing at 7:02. This public hearing on a proposal for the City of Helotes Economic Development Corporation to fund a small business assistance program that will offer 0% interest loans to businesses in the City of Helotes that have been impacted by the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. The program qualifies as an economic development project as defined by Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 505, Type B corporations. We did not have anyone sign up to speak on the public hearing, so we will close it, and it is 7:03. Next, we have a couple of proclamations under the recognition portion of the agenda. First is a proclamation recognizing the City of Helotes Public Works Department. I will just read these proclamations for the record. First is Office of the Mayor, Helotes, Texas, proclamation. National Public Works Week, the rhythm of public works. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Helotes. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our transportation, water supply, solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens of Helotes to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas today we recognize the work ethic and efficiency of our qualified and dedicated Public Works Supervisor Joshua Mayer, Public Works crew leaders Justin Vincent and Tim Miller, and Public Works Assistants Mark McGraw, Cody Matson, and Corey Bullow, who reflect the highest standards of professionalism while striving to improve our city services and the quality of life for our citizens. Now therefore I, Thomas A. Schoolcraft, on behalf of members of the City Council, and by virtue of the authority vested in me as Mayor of the City of Helotes, Texas, do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th through 23rd, 2020 as Public Works Week, and recognize and commend our Public Works employees for their service to our community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused this seal to be affixed. And here's the proclamation. Next up, we have a proclamation recognizing the City of Helotes Fire and EMS departments. And again, reading it for the record, Office of the Mayor, Helotes, Texas, proclamation, National EMS Week, ready today, preparing for tomorrow. Whereas emergency medical services are a vital public service, and the members of our emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize our highly trained emergency medical services team members, Captain EMT Jack Quick, Captain Paramedic Garrett Daughtery, Captain Paramedic Carl Hudson, Engineer and Paramedic Rowdy Johnson, AJ Freiberg, Jeff Dower, Firefighter Paramedics Derek Smith, John Sobchek, Jessica Marone, Nathan Allen, Vincent Rowell, John Bertram, and Firefighter EMT Jennifer Harris and Quentin Rose. Now therefore I, Thomas A. Schoolcraft, on behalf of members of the City Council, and by virtue of the authority vested in me as Mayor of the City of Helotes, Texas, do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th through 23rd, 2020 as National Emergency Medical Services Week in the City of Helotes, and commend and recognize our EMS personnel for their dedicated service to our community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused this seal to be affixed. And the proclamation. Okay, next up, item number 5, citizens to be heard. And we had no one sign up to speak for citizens to be heard. So we'll move on to consent agenda items 6 through 8. Typically, consent agenda items are considered routine, and the purpose of a consent agenda is to lump routine items together, items that are considered routine by the staff and me. And so what we're after is a motion and a second for approval of those consent items. If a council member would like to ask a question or have an item pulled, we can do that. So I'll ask now, are there any questions on either of these items or any of these three? And or do you have one that you'd like to request to be pulled? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 6 through 8.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve consent agenda items 6, 7, and 8.
We have a motion from Holmes. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Blue. So with a motion and a second, no discussion required, we'll call the question. All in favor of approving consent agenda items 6 through 8, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Oh yeah, hey, thanks, Paul. Figure another 6 or 8 meetings and I'll remember you're there.
I hope it won't be that long. Hopefully
Okay,
next week.
okay, very good. Okay, so that carries unanimously, and the consent agenda items 6 through 8 are approved. Next up is items for individual consideration. Item number 9, discussion of an action on resuming the spring 2020 brush pickup by C6 Disposal Systems, Inc. So I would entertain a motion and a second to discuss and take action on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to discuss item number 9 and take action, but I'd like to put it in, to split it in half. I'd like to just first consider rescheduling it, and then after, whether or not we decide to do that, then perhaps we won't need to even discuss the second part.
Right, yeah, we figured on dividing the,
So that's what I'd like to do, to
Okay.
discuss and take action on the spring 2020 brush pickup to a rescheduled date.
okay, do we have a second?
Pardon me, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Massey, a second by Holmes. So Cynthia, it's your motion, you're up.
Yes, you all got my agenda item request. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. You all have had a chance to read it. I am just going to do a little highlighted things. April 2nd, we learned that the city had canceled brush pickup. And the first thing, well, a couple of things went to my head. I didn't understand why, and the second was I believed that this was a city council, this should have been a city council decision. And so, and how we found out about it was in a letter, an email that was written to one of our citizens who was concerned and was kind of, complaining about it. And the response was that Helotes is obligated to comply with the declarations and executive orders issued by Governor Abbott and County Judge Nelson Wolf. So I've been reading all of the orders by both entities and could not see anything that actually permitted this. Brush pickup, trash pickup, that kind of thing, refuse pickup is an essential operation, and both of the executive orders issued by Judge Wolf continue that. It's exempt, which means that you need to continue doing them. And the same thing with the governor's letter to us, to all city council or elected officials, that his order expressly allows government entities to continue performing essential services. Well, like for Helotes in particular, brush pickup is an essential service. And there's a lot of people had already started to put their tree limbs out because they were ordered sheltered in place at the end of March. And with nothing to do, a lot of people were working on their yards. And you know that in Helotes in particular, we have a lot of big lots with a lot of brush and a lot of that kind of thing. So it wasn't until later that people started to realize that this wasn't. So there's a lot of people have already put them in, and there's a lot of yards that already have it in their front, and there's a lot that have it still in their back, and they're getting dry and everything. But we felt that we would like to see this brush pickup. The other thing too is I did speak with Jorge Cantu, had a 30-minute conversation with him. He is the owner of C6 to find out his reasoning. And he first would not, I'm not going to say admit, he didn't acknowledge that he requested it. He just acknowledged that he thought he might have some issues with his personnel, that somebody might get sick. In other words, nothing had actually happened at the point that this conversation took place where it was decided to cancel. He was concerned. And I talked to him again for 30 minutes. And after that, I told him that had it come to the city council, I may have considered postponing it, but not canceling it, based on everything that he told me. I still believe that we should have spring brush pickup. There was no compelling reason not to, and so that's where I stand.
Alan?
I feel basically the same way. I was disappointed to find out about the issue in a letter to a citizen before council was notified of it. My concern is that we live, at least I do and several members of the council, live in neighborhoods that are on large lots, and mine is one of the smaller of the large lots in the neighborhood. and I generate a lot of brush, have a lot of trees, and I generate a lot of brush myself. And at the present time, it's behind my garage in the back, and it's, as has been mentioned by myself and others, it's dry, and it in itself creates a fire hazard. It's a tinderbox, as well as a haven for rodents, and I know that because my dog keeps her nose stuck up underneath it, trying to push it over. The other thing is, as I drove through the neighborhood, our neighborhood, I counted 18 piles of brush in people's front yards that's sitting there right now. So there's behind their garage or their house, but it's still out on the street. And granted, some of those people put their brush out prematurely, and had they not, they would have, not had it out there and now possibly have to move it back to the back of their house. But it's out there. I even stopped one citizen, politely and friendly, and he was dragging his limbs out to the street, and I said, were you aware that the brush pickup has been canceled? And he was not very pleasant, and he told me, I'm fully aware of it, and I'm still putting it out here. I paid for it, and it's going to be picked up by somebody, and it won't be me. So I'm afraid that's the attitude that a lot of citizens have. The other one is that if you look at some online information, one is Nextdoor, and I hate to admit that I read Nextdoor, although there's a lot of good information in there, but there's a move underfoot, heavy one, to make the public be notified of the situation and why it all took place. And there's a lot of folks out there not happy. I myself have been approached, I don't know, 20, 25 times by citizens about the situation and what is the council going to do about this? Why was it canceled? And is it going to be reinstated? And so on and so forth. I've been stopped on the street. I've even had one citizen knock on my door. I didn't recognize him at first, but then I realized he was a neighbor down the street, and he was not happy. This was the first or second day that the notice went out. And signs started to be put up in the neighborhood. So all those things considered, I myself would like to see the spring brush pickup reinstated, so that we can calm these citizens down. And the adage is, and it's true, that we serve the public and the citizens of Helotes. So I would like to continue doing that by reinstating the brush pickup.
Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with many of the comments that have been previously stated. I too was surprised to have heard about it from, really to have heard about it after multiple citizens have. I still am not completely clear as to how it actually transpired. I've heard various comments about how it occurred, whether it was from C6 first, from the city first, etc., and how it occurred. I did hear that the conversation with C6 occurred, and it wasn't necessarily supposed to go on their website right away, but it did, and that's how the citizens found out first. And I'm not sure whether any of that has a validity. I think there are multiple issues that are in question here. I know only one is the agenda item. The issue, of course, being who has authority to make this kind of an alteration in that service. I don't think that's the issue before us tonight. The second, of course, is the notification of any decision that's made that alters the complete citizenry. And I know that over the years we've had a number of things that have occurred where the city has made a change in direction, and we find out about it from the citizens rather than through official channels through the city. But the question with regard to the rescheduling of the brush pickup, I am completely in favor of. I do have some questions, though, that I don't know how that would work out. One, I know that the initial concern by C6 and their CEO owner was that maybe there was going to be some possibility. That was 2 months ago. I think we're well past that stage, and so I haven't seen any interruption in the service of the pickup of the recycles or of the regular trash, which is going to be more frequent than coming to pick up the brush. Have we, since this agenda item came up, had any conversation, and I guess I address this to the mayor and or city administrator, with C6 as to their capacity to do so? The second question is, and I could look it up, but what was the original date and what would be the proposed date of the reschedule? and how would that work? And what are those actual dates that would be proposed? Because that's kind of important not only to our citizens, but also to C6, because having assumed now that it's been canceled, they've probably redirected some of their staffing and such, and we have to still work with them, right? We still have to go there. And then the final thing, which doesn't necessarily pertain to the reschedule, but my recommendation would be that as we move forward in the future, that the brush pickups be done earlier in the year, normally, because as we all know, cutting brush after all of the sprouts have occurred is probably not the best time, and to do so more towards winter than spring, but that's a separate contract discussion that maybe we can have with C6. Doing all of this, I understand the folks that already have it all out and cut, but if we reschedule, I expect that people are going to go out and start to cut because of the reschedule, and it may or may not be the best for the trees and the vegetation that they're cutting. Water under the bridge this year probably, but in the future maybe we should think about scheduling them in the future. The issue before us is to reschedule. I am in favor of that.
Mark?
Okay. That was really the only question I had. If council is leaning towards rescheduling this, would be to see if C6 could even do it. I mean, like Councilmember Blue was saying, I mean, like they might have other things scheduled already with other communities that they serve. So, and pretty much everything else. I mean, these are different times right now, and I know that you know, some decisions have to be made, you know, kind of right away. But I'm not real sure that. I mean, you know, that we had to make this decision this quick on canceling the brush pickup. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. It took, you know, it's just not it's not like, you know, there's a tornado coming and you have to decide whether or not to evacuate right away. It seems like we could have waited a little bit longer before we decided to, or it was decided to postpone this pickup. That's all I have.
Okay. Alex, just to address your questions.
Paul, sir. Paul.
Oh yeah, Paul. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of the points that made that I was going to make, and the main one was, can C6 put us back on the schedule without a huge disruption in their business? I mean, I understand that we made the decision, or the city made the decision to cancel it, and you know, that I don't want to put them in the middle of a disagreement that's kind of of our making. I don't know. I guess we can argue if brush pickup was essential. I know I've got a huge pile in my backyard that's unsightly and getting quite brown and crispy. So I would like to reschedule if at all possible, but I think we need to take into consideration what C6 can do in a timely manner. That's all.
Okay. Alex, to answer your question, the brush pickup was going to be from May 4th and run through June 19th. May 4th would have been the east or right side going up the hill of Circle A in Helotes Park Estates. That would have meant that the 2 weeks that people are allowed to put their brush out ahead of time would have been April 20th. The notice that we sent out after some consideration and deliberation on it, and you all have read my explanation to that one citizen, we decided to go ahead and cancel the brush pickup and so that we could get the notice out in the April billing cycle and give people plenty of time to understand that we were, at least at that time, canceling the brush pickup for spring. So that was basically 5 weeks before the first date. Any piles that were out, as typical on brush pickup, some people put their piles out 6 to 8 weeks ahead of time, and they're being requested over and over 2 weeks. And so that's always been a problem. Earlier in the year, you may recall, we used to have the brush pickup in the spring in June and July. and then the fall or winter would have been January and February, and they were 5 weeks each. Several years ago, at the request of people, citizens, that it was so hot in June and July, it was very tough for them to really work and get the brush out like they would want to. And at the same time, in talking to C6, they were saying that June and July are the peak time for their employees to want to go on vacation. And they were constantly trying to keep the trucks going and allowing their employees that. Plus, they were having a hard time keeping their employees out there hydrated because the temperatures were so high. Conversely, January and February, it was about the coldest months of the year, and it was tough. Plus, we had a lot of complaints from citizens that the people putting their brush piles out early was causing an eyesore around the city over the Christmas and sometimes Thanksgiving holidays. And so it's a double-edged sword. You hear disgruntled citizens calling in for this case, but we also get calls each year, people complaining about their neighbors putting their brush out too early, that it's unsightly, they don't want it around on holidays. So consequently, at that time, we changed the pickup times to May and June to get away from the vacation cycle, not only for C6, but a lot of people go on vacation in June and July, and that way, moving it earlier in the year makes it more possible for them to put their brush out. And then we moved the January and February to October and November. It actually starts October 5th this fall and will end November 20th, because the request we had years ago was that it would be nice to have all the brush out of the city prior to the Thanksgiving holiday. And so that's a little history there. And now we allow 7 weeks rather than 5 weeks for both of those pickups. And then you said, asked if we had conversations with C6. Yes, we're always having conversations with C6, and I'll fill you in on a little bit on an approach we're looking at to complete the brush pickup, but I'll get to that later. I just wanted to let you know, Marion Mendoza, our city administrator, Scott Moreland, our fire chief, and also our emergency management coordinator, and I started attending daily conference calls and briefings with county, state, and federal agencies to learn as much as we could about the COVID-19 virus. And we started this around the middle of March, I would say. And we're still on pretty much weekly briefings. I was on a phone call for county judges and mayors with Governor Abbott on Monday. That was very informative. They let us know of a new funding source that's available for reimbursement to municipalities because of the COVID-19 virus. And then yesterday, I was on a conference call with governors, county judges, and mayors with the White House, and that was a very informative briefing on the status of everything. And then today I was on a conference call, and Marion was also, with Judge Wolf's staff on the latest developments in Bexar County, and that call is a weekly call with the suburban city mayors, and that's 27 mayors that are on there and their staffs. And so we're still in this ongoing learning stage. You have to remember, hopefully, when the decision was made to do this, cancel the brush pickup, the numbers were going up on positive cases. It was pretty much doom and gloom. And the Attorney General, the Surgeon General of the United States, actually the first weekend in April, I believe, got on TV and told us that the first week or two of April was going to be worse than Pearl Harbor and 9/11 and the deaths across the country. So we started looking at different aspects of this and things that might happen, although unlikely. And just as we've had to cancel the spring concert, our movie nights, the Carnival Parade and Marketplace in Old Town, we looked at the brush pickup the same way. And at that time, I repeat, at that time, it seemed like a very real potential of having some bad problems with people just getting sick and the thing not being able to be completed. So that was basically how we got there. I would like to just as a note, let everybody know I'm been a resident of Helotes for a little over 40 years. My wife and I brought our family here from Pipe Creek in February of 1980. And so we were actually here a year and a half before the city incorporated as the Type A General Law City. And gosh, as far back as I can remember, we've had brush pickups. And of course, as I've gotten older, my brush piles have gotten a little smaller, but I pretty well put brush out every cycle. And I know a lot of other people do too. I would like to remind everybody that we do have another option, and I use this throughout the year, every year. When we don't have a lot of trash now that our kids are grown and gone, I use my toter and fill it with dead wood and leaves and clippings and everything. And then a lot of neighbors, I saw 2 today that have 3 garbage cans out next to their toter. They're filled with limbs. And so you do have the option of having 3 bundles of brush or limbs or trimmings, as long as they don't exceed 4 feet and they don't weigh more than about 35 pounds. There's slack there, but you can bundle those up, and every pickup day put those bundles out. And that's how I get rid of a lot of trash or brush through the year. So that's available to all of us now, and a lot of people use it, but not everybody knows about it. But that's really the answers, hopefully, to your questions. It gives you a little insight on why. And I realized at that time it seemed a very pertinent move to go ahead and do what we did. As it turns out, now we're looking at some other options, like I said, that I'll briefly explain to you, to where we can go ahead and help out. But it's just, I hear what you're saying about people putting their brush out early, but it's just not supposed to happen. And I know it does every time. But anyway, hopefully that answers your questions. And we'll go back then, Cynthia, you can have your follow-up, and then we'll go around, and then I have Frank Garza here to give a little input on what this is all about.
Brush pickup, you equated that with this, all of these activities that are social activities. So I don't know how you could have equated that. Brush pickup is totally different. It's refuge pickup, and it's vital. It's vital. It's not vital to go to a spring concert and some of these other social events that you said were canceled. So I'm not sure how the thinking got into that, other than if he had not called you and asked you this, I'm sure it would not have come up. So he did call you, he mentioned it, and then you just kind of ran with it, because, and I understand a lot of people were panicked at that time, and all of these suppositions of what horrible could happen, and the gloom and doom crowd, and of course I've never bought into that. Apparently some people here have, but I have not, and so I think that my thinking has been borne out more so than yours. But anyway, as far as talking to Jorge, I know that Councilmember Holmes did just yesterday or the day before. Again, when I spoke with him, I could find no compelling reason. And in fact, I did speak with him in April, just a few days after I found out about this. And so I asked him, after we had this 30-minute conversation and he was explaining things to me, I did sympathize to some extent with his situation. But I just said, look, after everything you just told me, Jorge, he said he had never asked us for anything before, and I reminded him that yes, he had. That he had asked for gas money. And so he said, "Oh, thanks for reminding me. I didn't remember that." And I said, "Well, I remembered that because I've been on council a long time, and I remember approving that." And so I said, "What I would like for you to do after we talked," and I said, "I don't see any compelling reason. No one is sick. Everything is based on a supposition that somebody is going to get sick." And I said, "But we do have a contract, and I would like for you to call the mayor and tell him you'd like to reinstate it." And this was 5 weeks ago, and he didn't say anything, so I knew then that he wasn't going to do it. He just did not want to do it. So there you go. I just wanted you to know that.
Alan?
On the manpower thing, I did have a conversation with Mr. Cantu. It was a very pleasant conversation. But one of the topics we discussed was the danger to the employees, and it certainly could have been. I don't think it was anything near what we anticipated it was going to be. But his brush pickup program, which to me is a very, very good one, and it handles it very well. But it's basically, nowadays it's a one-man operation. He used to send 2 or 3 guys with each truck. One guy operating the boom and another guy drilling ground, raking up what's left and throwing it into the truck by hand. But the gentleman that he's got operating that boom and that crane is very, very good. And the last 4 or 5 pickups that they've done was just a single man. And he got out of the cab, went up to the top where the controls are operated on the boom, and he was able to pick up literally 100% of it with just his hands on the controls and that bucket on the boom, picking up the trash. And the gentleman never got out of his truck. He stays either on or in the truck the entire time. And now I realize there are support staff that has to take place with that back at the shop, and mechanics and gas people and that sort of stuff. So there are other people, but primarily it's a one-man operation for him, and a very good one. So I do not understand and to me it's far less possibility of getting sick than the normal receptacle guys who pick up the toters and sometimes reach in the trash and pull it out and throw it in the truck, or sometimes they grab hold of it and throw it in, or use the equipment on the truck to dump it. But that's, to me, that would be have far more possibility of getting someone sick. And of course, that never stopped. That continued. So I felt like the one-man operation, out of not touching anything other than his own equipment, was not a danger or had the possibility of infecting one of his employees, and far less so than the actual people picking up the trash. Anyway, that's all.
Alex?
Thank you. The issue is to reschedule, and I'm still in favor of that issue, and I want to move forward with that. You said you would address the options available to the city at some point into scheduling. I still think we need to, while we can work with them, I think they can work with us and we can get it accomplished.
Bert?
Yeah, pretty much everything's been said. I think it's just a matter of whether or not he can do it, whether or not trees should be trimmed now, all that. I mean, approving to reschedule is okay, but can it really be done? That's the real question now in my mind, just like Councilmember Blue said. So if we're leaning that way, I think there's a lot more questions to be asked of C6 and maybe our city arborist and things like that. So anyway, that's all I had. And then I also like to hear what the attorney mentioned something about the city attorney. I'd like to hear what that's about.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah, I just, we get to sit here and have this conversation with some hindsight, and we weren't around for the original discussion, so we didn't get privy to the information that was coming down that went into your decision making. I mean, if C6 can put us back on the schedule, I'm for it, but again, I don't want to cause a disruption in their business because of our doing. That's all.
Okay. And just for clarity, I was not necessarily equating the brush pickup to our city-sponsored events. I was just saying all of those decisions were made in about the same time frame. As far as the one-man operation, typically George has 2 men on the brush truck, a driver, and then the grapple operator, and the driver also handles raking up the debris for the grapple operator. The times you see 1 man on there, it's because he's a man short, which happens occasionally, but it's designed with the 7-week schedule for a 2-man crew to be out there with the truck. Okay, do you have Frank? Frank, you there?
No, I need to call him first.
Oh, okay.
Frank? He's on there.
Okay, Frank, welcome. Everybody knows who you are. You've been listening to the discussion, so we'd like to have your input from the legal standpoint on how the action was taken and why the action was taken, please.
Sure, Mayor. Based on the discussion, it doesn't really sound like there was the council's challenging the discretion under the law that you do have during an emergency declaration. But basically, under Chapter 418 of the Government Code, the mayor, for all emergency declaration purposes, is an ultimate authority for making decisions for the public health and safety and welfare of the residents. Now, it's based, much of it early on was, as the mayor was saying, was moving quickly and not sure what was going on. Did the mayor have the authority to terminate a provision that was called for in the contract? It's my legal opinion that he did under Chapter 418 of the Government Code with regards to it. Now, this only applies when there is this declaration of local disaster. The mayor would never have such authority if it was during normal, typical time periods. He could not amend a contract unilaterally. It would have required council action. But when it comes to periods of emergency declarations, the mayor does have the same authority as the governor. It only applies, however, to the local jurisdiction and not statewide like the governor's, but he has the ultimate authority as long as he does not issue any declaration that is in direct conflict with the governor's. And so, again, it's my opinion that in this instance, he did have the authority under the emergency declaration power to cancel the brush pickup.
Okay, we'll let the council follow up with any questions they might have. Cynthia?
The executive order that Governor Abbott sent on March 19th, it was sent to all of us elected officials, and it said all critical infrastructure will remain operational and government entities and businesses will continue providing essential services. The Constitution does not allow local actions to impair the obligation of state contracts, and his order expressly allows government entities to continue performing essential services. So does that not have anything to do with what we're talking about right now?
Well, the governor's order does allow for government provisions to continue the essential services. But in this instance, the mayor's discretion may deem what was essential and was not essential. There was no direct conflict. While the governor's order did allow for recycling to continue and trash pickup to continue and waste management to continue, this was an option, well, this was an additional service that's called for in the contract. Again, hindsight, would the mayor do it again with the discretion? What is known now? Don't know. But at the time the decision was made, it's my opinion that he did have that discretion. Now, was it in direct conflict with anything the governor issued? I don't believe so.
Thank you.
Alan,
No, I don't think there's any more.
Alex?
I do have a question. This is Alex Blue. Not with regard to the original decision. I think that's become very clear, obviously, and wasn't one of my questions in the first place. But and this is probably a slightly different question in the sense. Now that we're talking about rescheduling, and given the fact that we've already given C6 notice that it's been canceled, is there any legal opinion with regard to our ability to then put it back on the schedule after the original decision to remove it? Is there any implication as to the contract in that regard?
I don't believe so. I mean, the decision can be made unilaterally. I mean, it would have to be agreed to by C6 and so forth. Being familiar with C6, because they do provide services to a few of my other cities, they usually do not do brush pickup during the summer months, your July, August time period, and I believe your next pickup is scheduled for October. So anything that they could be capable of doing, the city is not prohibited from asking, and if C6 is willing to do it, in my opinion, it would have to probably be done in May or early June.
Thank you.
That was my question too. I don't have anything else.
Frank, as long as,
Paul.
oh yeah, Paul.
No, my question was answered. Thank you.
Okay. Frank, as long as the emergency declaration by the governor is still in effect, that would the decision would be up to me. Is that correct?
With regards to rescheduling,
Yes.
well, it would also have to be up to C6.
Yeah. Right.
But you could negotiate to reinstate it. Since you used your emergency declaration to cancel it, if it can be reinstated, utilizing that same authority to reinstate it.
Yes. And that's something that I've been considering for a while. Anything else, Frank?
No, sir.
So as far as taking action to reinstate it by the council, that would not be appropriate at this time. Is that correct?
Well, the council could take an action recommending that it be reinstated. But as far as officially reinstating, would have again, much is going to depend on what C6, how C6 responds.
Okay.
Frank, can I ask you a follow-up?
Sure.
Thank you, Frank. This is Alex. But so, if I understand you correctly, the authority you stated earlier that the mayor had to alter the contract came from the governor's declaration, not from the city's declaration. Is that correct? Or was it the city's declaration of emergency that made the difference, not the governor's? I just want to clarify that, because another agenda on this item is whether or not we're going to extend the city's declaration, and otherwise it would be expiring in a couple of weeks, and that would alter the answer that you're giving.
The emergency authority for the mayor is active as long as there is a declaration in place.
Which
By the governor?
It would have to be the city's declaration, because the governor's declaration can still be in place, but if the city does not have a declaration in place, the mayor is no longer basically the emergency management officer. The mayor is the emergency management officer during the declaration of disaster for that municipality.
Thank you.
Frank, our emergency declaration is primarily to qualify us for receiving reimbursements from the different funding organizations, FEMA and others. There's no direct orders in our declaration other than for that purpose.
That's not true.
Correct. In order for a municipality to be eligible to receive disaster funding, it has to have had a declaration in place.
Correct. Okay, Paul, we heard from you, right? You said nothing else?
No, sir.
Okay. What I would like to let you know is, of course, like I said, when this decision was made, things looked a lot worse than they do now. And of course, Marion and I discussed these things simply because that's what we're supposed to be doing and reconsidering things. I have been researching what other cities around the country are doing, and our goal was to bring you a proposal tonight to be able to implement the brush pickup, but in a little different way than we've been doing in years past, because it just makes more sense in a lot of respects, and it has a lot of positives to it and would eliminate some of the problems that we have now. Chose not to really do that because I didn't want it to reflect on this particular agenda item, so we'll be bringing that to you next time on the 28th. But basically, it's going to be a way where we can have brush pickup year-round, and it's a unique process. It's smaller quantities of brush on a monthly basis. I'm not going to give you a lot of detail because it'll be to your consideration on the next agenda. And but that would allow us to get rid of some of the negatives of having huge piles of brush twice a year, way earlier than they're supposed to be, sometimes 6 to 8 weeks. And it would give people an opportunity to do their trimming year-round. In respect to your months of the year, of course, the colder months are recommended for trimming trees, but that's primarily oak, red oak, and live oak. We have a lot of persimmon, we have a lot of hackberry, we have a lot of chinaberry, a lot of cedar or juniper. And so that's what makes up, I think, the majority of brush piles anyway. The oak, true, should be trimmed in cold weather, but in our climate, in this zone, for the beetle that is purported to carry the fungus from tree to tree, is here all the time. You should paint your limbs year-round in this zone. So the fact that we have it in May and June and October and November really is ideal, but people can trim oak trees year-round as long as they paint. And so that's something to remember also. But I just want you to know that we are looking at that option, and we'll have a full presentation on it for you, and we can implement that in June. And the intent is to have that as a test to see if it works, both for us and for C6, and how the citizens like it. And that would run through June through probably August or September as a test. And C6 has already agreed to it. And actually, I think they're very interested in it because other cities in Bexar County are doing that now. So that's what we'd like to do. And then if it turns out to where people like it and it's working well, we'll have the option to keep it going and amend the contract at that time, and that would be y'all's prerogative, or move right into the October 5th through November 20th regular brush pickup. And so that's kind of where we are right now. And we'll be bringing that, like I said, to you on the 28th, because we want to have people be able to have their brush picked up. I want to have my brush picked up, and now that the intensity of the virus is flattening, it's amazing that 8 to 10 weeks ago, nobody was thinking of social distancing. Nobody was thinking of wearing masks. We were all still shaking hands with everybody. We were hugging our friends and our family, and our lives have been turned totally upside down. Now that things are calming down, we see that we can go back and do things. So we're as interested here, Marion and myself and Scott, since we are the Office of Emergency Management, getting things back and on schedule. And so just want you to know, we didn't bring it tonight because of this one, but we are bringing it next time, and we will be ready to implement it in June if you guys agree with the premise. So that being said, Cynthia, any follow-up?
It would have been nice to know, I have been trying to get in contact with you about this for the last 6 weeks, and you would never speak to me about it. To just, and this is what you always do, you just throw it at us like this. But no, I'm thinking that you probably are doing this because we finally put it on the agenda and pushed the issue. So thank you, Mayor.
Alan?
So, am I to understand then that tonight we'll just be making a recommendation then whether to reinstate brush pickup, and then a decision will be made at another time, possibly as early as 2 weeks?
Yes, the 28th. You have a chance to make it.
Well, that's a tough one, Mayor.
And we've been working on this solution for a while. Has nothing to do with this agenda item. Alex?
Well, again, the timing is a bit interesting, but it would have been nice to know that the solution was an option before we had all the commentary and everything else that went through all of this, and all of the citizens that have been worked up and everything else. I mean, it does seem to go a little backwards, but I'm still a little confused by the exchange that was had by our city attorney and by you, and the comments that were made in that sense. When I asked the question, the authority to cancel it, and thereby, by extension, the authority to reinstate it, lies with you. By what authority? The city attorney, I thought I heard him say that authority came from the city's declaration of emergency, immediately followed by your statement that our declaration of emergency doesn't have that provision in it, which by that statement indicates that you didn't have the authority by your own statement. And I'm not really sure whether our attorney's still in the phone or not to even answer the question as to that really is that really what I heard in that sense, and if then that authority was never there in the first place, and all we can do is recommend to do something that you couldn't have undone. It seems to me kind of backwards in the way some of that was answered. And I'd like a little clarity as to what that answer really was, because what he said and what you said seemed to counteract the next comment that was said about only a recommendation.
Right. His opinion was a little different than we've talked about it before, so we'll address that.
Can I clarify?
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, what I meant, and maybe I didn't say it clear, that while a city has a declaration of disaster, the presiding officer of the governing body is the emergency management director. So, while this is in effect, you are the emergency managing director. If there is no declaration in place, you are not the emergency management director. The declaration is not going to have every bit of what the authority is or decisions having to be made by the emergency management director. But during a declaration, the mayor in the city is the emergency management director and will be able to make decisions based on emergency situations. So it doesn't have to be stated in the declaration every decision that you will be making, but a declaration has to be in place for you to be the emergency management director.
So thank you, Frank, because that clarifies. That's what I thought I'd heard you say until the clarification then confused me. So
then it wasn't a clarification.
Well, it wasn't as clarified as I thought, but now it is. Thank you. So the declaration that was originally made by the mayor and then confirmed by the council 60 or I guess 45 some days ago now is that point, which is why, Frank, you made that statement that our action tonight could only be a recommendation. I understand that the mayor and our city administrator have been working with C6 to come up with a solution, and while the motion is not mine nor the second, I would recommend then to the maker of the motion either to amend it or whatever, to postpone this item to the next council meeting to be placed after the agenda item with the one that the mayor is bringing to us, so that in the event that that isn't acceptable, then this could still be acted upon which would then be one day following the potential expiration of the emergency declaration the city has in place.
Hey, I will move to do that.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Bert?
With this new revelation here about the monthly pickup, I'm on the board of directors with the Helotes Festival Association, and C6 uses our back property there to put their big dumpsters out there for brush collection, and they can do it the times of year that are now in place because we don't have other events that use that back field. But if you're going to do it monthly and they need to use those fields back there all the time, that will not be feasible. So I don't know what they're going to do with all those dumpsters. That's going to be a hurdle unless they're going to haul it off straight to to wherever they take brush. I don't know if they take it to burning bush or wherever, but they use that back field quite extensively. So that's going to be another hurdle or another thing that you're going to need to talk to C6 about for the monthly stuff. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, Paul, anything? Paul?
I think he accidentally disconnected himself.
Oh, really?
Yes, he's not in the room anymore.
Okay,
He'll call back in.
okay. Just for some clarification again, the intent is never to surprise you guys. We're just working on things internally here, and if we don't have it ready to bring to you, we don't bring it to you. As far as Councilmember Massey, his comment about trying to get me for 6 weeks, I can assure you that never happened. I have not received a phone call. I received 3 emails, which were fairly mean-spirited, but I answered 2 of those, and the other one pretty well stood on its own, and I didn't have to answer it. But my door is always open. In fact, I haven't had any communication, nor has Marion, as far as I know, directly to this item from any of you. So, especially from the 2 individuals, Massey and Holmes, that brought this agenda item to us.
I can show you the email. The last email I sent you, the last sentence of it was, "What can I do? What can we do to reinstate this?" That was and I never received a response.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to see that.
Yes, I will send it to you.
Okay. And I'm not here to get into a debate with any of you. I'm just here to help this thing go along. So you had a recommendation to postpone until the 28th on this item? Is that right? You had
That
a
was my
recommendation?
recommendation to the...
We'll make that option to the motion maker. Other than that, if you want to go ahead and make this a recommendation to reinstate tonight, that sounds like, according to the city attorney, is something that you can do also.
Mr. Mayor, Paul is back in.
Hey, Paul, anything from you? Paul? You sure?
Are you there?
Yeah. Anything from you?
No, go ahead.
Okay. We'd like to point out, like I have in the past, that a lot of the decisions that we make internally here are tough decisions to make, and this happened to be one of them. We knew there'd be some people that would be upset, but you have to make a decision when you feel you have to make it. Again, there was no intention to diminish the importance of it, and that y'all might have been informed a little better than you were. I'll acknowledge that, but hey, what is, and that's pretty much the way it happened, and hopefully we're going to get it to where we can make this work for us in a much better way than it has in years past. Okay, so did you want to amend this to postpone?
The item that you're going to bring up at the next meeting is to start a monthly, and it's going to be C6 doing it starting in June.
That's our intent, yes. As soon as in June, he'll be ready to go in June. It's whether we can get the word out to the first section. And again, I don't want to get into a lot of detail because it's going to be an item you all will be discussing on the next agenda. But it is a way that we can improve the system, we feel, and make it available to everyone year-round rather than just twice a year.
I am prepared to amend my motion to postpone it for the next meeting,
Which would be May 28th.
May 28th.
Alan, you second that amendment?
I'll second the amendment.
You second it?
I'll second.
The motion has been amended to delay or to postpone this item, at least the first half of it, since we're dividing the question. Dividing the question. So is that pertaining to the whole item or just the first?
For me, it will be, yes.
The whole one? Same with you?
Same.
So the whole item, both parts will be postponed until May 28th, at which time we will bring a couple of alternates to you. Okay. Anything else? Alex, you have anything?
No, sir, thank you.
Bert?
I'm still not understanding. You mean I would be able to put brush out every month and have it picked up?
In smaller quantities, yes. Yeah, a lot of cities are doing it. We'll have all the details.
Okay.
We'll have a PowerPoint.
Well, this one, and if it would come up in June, if it works all out, it's going to be a little bigger than small pop because there's some
That's what I'm-
piles out there right now that are kind of large.
Yeah, they'll just have to divide up whatever they have.
Okay. All right. Nothing else from me.
Okay.
Oh.
Paul, anything from you?
No, sir.
Okay, I will call the question. All in favor of postponing until May 28th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, this motion is postponed until May 28th. Okay, next up, first reading on a resolution of the City Council of the City of Helotes, Texas, approving a project of the Helotes Economic Development Corporation to establish a small business assistance program. And you've seen the resolution. This is something, Mary, would you like to address this program and let the council know what we've worked out or you have with the EDC and the intent? Did you want to do your PowerPoint now or do that on the next one?
On the next one, because the next one is the action.
Yeah.
As per regulations of EDC, there has to be a first reading and then the second reading to do action on any expenditures over $10,000 for an EDC.
So this is merely a procedural deal. We're letting you take a look at it in your packet and make it available to the public. This is just part of the process to get us to the next item, which is the action item. So we'll move on to item number 10. To number 11. This is a second and final reading and discussion and action on a resolution of the City Council of the City of Helotes approving a project of the Helotes Economic Corporation to establish a small business assistance program. And Marion has a PowerPoint.
So,
This is something that the EDC has been working on for a couple of weeks now.
we've actually been working on it since March, but because of all the provisions and everything, we needed to do some research, background information, and get it all together. We brought it to EDC 2 weeks ago, and then brought it back yesterday, and they did approve it to implement this program, pick a lender, and set the parameters for this program. The first one is just the background of what and why we decided. Bear County launched a 5.65 loan and grant program, exhausting all funds within 2 days. There were some Helotes businesses that took advantage of that, but this was all for the whole county. So it does limit what funds are available. Then the SBA payroll protection program ran out of funds on April 16th. A lot of that was given to a lot of big businesses and not the small businesses in which this program is basically targeting. So the Helotes Economic Development is proposing to create a small business assistance program for the city of Helotes businesses that have been suffered financially losses due to COVID. The overview on this is that we're looking at creating a zero-interest loan program to offer the financial assistance. Loans will be up to $20,000, and it would be only for businesses 20 employees or fewer for all the business locations, so that it's emphasizing small businesses here in Helotes. The total funding would be $300,000 for the loan distribution and $36,000 for the administration fee, totaling $336,000. Staff will partner with a community development financial institution lender, BCL, to administer the loans. They've been in existence for over 30 years. The HEDC current unreserved balance right now is $816,000. The state law requires state Type B organizations to hold public hearings and wait 60 days before expending the funds. If approved, the soonest that the economic development can release the funds would be July 2nd. But while we were doing this research, BCL informed us that they could provide up to $200,000 depending on the total fund distribution, and we've talked to them and they can provide that total amount to start up the program and be reimbursed for that portion on July 2nd and then finish the distribution of the other $100,000. It will be written in the contract, and like I said, they have their own working capital for emergency circumstances such as this, and they felt that they would want to help the city of Helotes. The next couple of slides talks about the lender. They've been established since 1990. They're Austin-based. The recovery rate is 95 to 98%, depending on the community population. The smaller population are closer to the 98.6% recovery rate. The partners that they've also done such loans or different kinds of loans with is Hutto, Austin, LaGrange, and Travis County. They're also in negotiation with Schertz as of right now. The way that the application process would work is you could either go online to complete all the forms, such as the economic injury form, the documentation verification, and credit score authorization. Also, they can come in person to our office, submit the application, and require documents, because some people might not feel comfortable on doing that or have some questions. So we'll have staff there, or they can do it by mail. The cost for this, we were looking at the loan fund between $200,000 and $399,000. It was decided by the board at $300,000. The administration fee would be $36,000. The cost to the borrower is a $100 application fee that will be deducted from the loan disbursement. And that was one of the reasons that we actually went with BCL, because the other lenders were asking for 5 to 10%. And so we felt that it was more positive for the borrowers to actually get the money instead of having to pay this fee. Other professional services they would provide would be education programs for borrowers, assist in promoting the program, manage customer files and loan servicing, and then pull the credit reports as necessary to no cost, just to verify any of the liabilities or collateral pledge. They actually helped their current lenders, the current borrowers, with some of the PPP, and 100% of the ones that they applied for got funding. The way this would work would be business owners will complete an application and provide all required documents. It's subject for a credit review and financial assessment. Loans will range between $5,000 to $20,000, and then they would be used for working capital, utilities, rent, insurance premiums, payroll needs as a result of the COVID-19. Once approved, businesses will be required to submit receipts and invoices verifying the proper use of the funds. The loan terms will be initially a 90-day deferment, and then the loan will be based on a criteria between the EDC and the lender on the amount, depending on the economic injury form. The terms of the base of the loan is the payback will be 24 months for up to $10,000 and 36 months for up to $20,000. The eligible businesses are located within the corporate city limits of Helotes. has not received county, state, or federal COVID loan, this will be reviewed on an individual basis because some people did get some, but it was a minimum amount of maybe only 1,000, and we feel that they still would need some kind of assistance. So we will review each application. Businesses must be in operation as of May 2019, and they must be current in their certificate of occupancy, have no code violations, and must be a sales tax producing business. They must demonstrate a loss of revenue beginning March 1st, and we will look at it for a 12-month basis to determine that. The application information that we're requesting would be business ownership, the impacts, personnel counts and reductions, revenue estimates and reductions, the use of the loan funds, collateral, both personal and business, and ability to properly cover the expenses and the new loan payment. As I said, the process will accept until the date to be determined depending on the start date or when funds are exhausted. The lender will review the applicants for compliance and send review reports to the EDC, and then we'll give higher priority with businesses with frequent and close contact with customers and large business revenue loss. That is a summary of the actual program and the criteria.
Thanks, Marion. Since this is an action item, we'll have a motion and a second to discuss and take action on the resolution that the EDC is working on. And then Marion's here to answer any questions that you have. So if we can have a motion and a second to discuss and take action on the EDC resolution.
We're going to make a motion to discuss, take action on agenda item number 11.
I have a motion from Bies. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Alan beat you to it, Paul. Sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, so we have a motion from Bies and a second from Holmes. So Bert, you're up with any discussion?
Yes, just a couple of questions.
Sure.
First of all, I think this is a great project in my mind. Okay. First question is, does it have to be 20 or fewer full-time employees?
That is what the board, as we looked at it, we felt that to be able to help, a lot of our big businesses did apply for the PPP and did receive it, but the ones that are not applying or didn't have the experience to apply for those federal loans and so forth are the small businesses, and that's why we're looking, and when we did kind of a survey, they range at the 20 mark.
Oh, okay. Because I was kind of thinking about El Chaparral, if they wanted in on this. I think they have 120, a business like that, but they wouldn't be eligible if they had 120.
If they had 120,
I understand there has to be a limit. And this is probably a no-brainer question, but this is not going to affect the other two projects that have already been approved.
No, we had enough. That's why with those other two projects, the actual reserved and unreserved loan balance is $1,000,002. So we minus that to say this is what's available, which was $816.
Okay, that's all I had.
I'm up.
Okay, yeah, you're up.
Marion had two questions. One is the recovery rate at 95 to 98%. So what we're saying on this $300,000 that we need to be prepared, I say we, EDC and the city, need to be prepared for a loss of unrecoverable funds of $6,000 to $15,000.
Right, and we're looking probably more at the 6,000 being a smaller community. The 95 was for some of the bigger communities when they dealt with like Dallas, Fort Worth, or Austin.
Okay. Who will determine the value of the collateral?
That will be the BCL, Texas. That's what they do. They are a lender, and so that's why we didn't feel like we had the experience as staff to administer this. So we looked out to have a lender to do it.
And will that be personal as well as business collateral?
Correct. It will be both.
Okay. Then the last question I have for Marion is, will the city have input into who gets chosen? Obviously, these funds are not going to last long, and they're not going to be nearly large enough to satisfy everybody's needs relative to the COVID. How will the city be involved in making the decision?
We will review the applications with the lender to make that determination.
And okay, the criteria for the approval, do we have that?
It's all the criteria that's listed, but the main thing is their economic injury form that will tell us how much loss that they had and if they can be able to pay back with their current expenses, the loan.
Okay, but equal consideration being given to very small businesses, smaller mom and pop type businesses as well as the larger businesses, maybe all the way up to El Chaparral. So there'll be the city will have input as to what.
Yes, to what, yes,
Which businesses, what size businesses,
And maybe to decide at that point to what, how much maybe we put aside for the 10,000, which is the smaller, that usually the smaller businesses will ask for, because they just can't afford to pay back a $20,000 loan, and then the rest will be for the bigger businesses.
okay, and that decision will not be made until everyone has had the opportunity to make applications.
Right, we'll take in applications for the first week or two, and then start looking at reviewing them, and to be able to give out funding.
Okay, at a certain cutoff.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we need to be sure they understand, and maybe I'm not understanding it, but the way I took this, it's an EDC project. The council is just approving the resolution and the project itself. The applications will not come back to council for approval. The applications are being handled by BCL, the lender. The lender will qualify each applicant as a borrower, and if they qualify and have suitable collateral, then they'll be considered for approval on the loan. The intent was for small businesses, like an Old Town and others, not an AutoZone or something like that, as to have the first priority at the loan. But the board of directors of the EDC will actually be overseeing BCL on this and furnishing the funds for the loan, which is a net of $300,000 plus the $1,000 a month administrative fees that will be allocated each budget year for 36 months.
Thank you. If council approves this tonight, then we're pretty much out of it. After that, it goes back to EDC.
Correct.
And
It's their
and
project.
staff.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alex?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Marion. It's a wonderful program. I'm sure you spend a lot of time working on it, and I think that our local small businesses are going to be very appreciative. I only hope that it's in time for some of them to actually to do well. If I heard you correctly, that there was some other funds that we're going to have, because we can't actually draw the funds from the EDC monies until July 2nd, we'll have access to another area that will allow us sort of to borrow it, pay it out faster, and then we'll pay them back on July
Correct.
2nd?
BCL has the capital to do that, and so they are within the contract going to use their capital, the 200, with the condition that we reimburse them that.
Perfect, thank you. And that to me is very important, because it could be the difference of whether a business stays afloat or not between now and July 2nd.
Yes.
Thank you. I think it's a wonderful program, and I approve.
Bert? Oh, you've already been there.
See,
Paul? I remember.
Yeah, the audio had gotten bad there for a while, but I didn't hear much of that presentation. But I'm very much for the program, and I like the eligibility requirements that they have to hit. So I'm all in favor for this. Thank you.
Cynthia?
I have a question about the 36,000 administrative. It says 36,000 administrative fees to be paid monthly over 36-month period. We're paying it 36,000 a month.
No, 1,000 a
1,000
month,
a month
sorry.
for a
It's
total.
supposed to be 36,000 divided within 36 months, which
Okay,
equals
because that's not what it
1,000.
says
Yes.
here, and it's very confusing because that's a lot of money, and I was going to say, wow. Okay, so it's a total of 36,000
Correct.
over 30, and then it's being paid over 36 months, and so the 300,000 loan distribution is from the EDC funds that'll go to the bank. And is that how that works?
It goes to, well, because we have to reimburse them the 200,000 immediately, whatever is spent of the 200,000, and then the 100. Yes, the lender is the one that actually will be deciding on those funds.
So the lender will be dispersing the funds?
Correct.
Okay. That's fine. No, I think it's a great program. This is exactly what the EDC should be doing to help our businesses.
Okay, in negotiating the contract, which is still part of this motion, the 200,000 advance from BCL is to allow them to have the funds sooner, and it's good because that's a zero interest to the EDC. And then the 100,000, the last 100,000, we're going to try and get to come from the EDC directly. And then the way, hopefully, we're going to have it structured is that the payments that come in monthly on the loans, that money monthly will come back to the EDC to replenish the original loan fund. Anything to add to that?
No, that's it.
Okay. Bert, any follow-up?
No, sir.
Alan?
No follow-up.
Alex,
No, sir.
anything?
Thank you.
Paul, any follow-up to that?
No, sir.
Cynthia?
No.
Okay, then we'll call the question on approving the resolution and allowing the EDC to go forward with their small business assistance program. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Opposed, say no. Hearing no negative votes, the agenda item is approved unanimously. Number 12, discussion of an action on a declaration of the City of Helotes, Texas, extending a declaration order of local disaster and public health emergency for the City of Helotes as a result of the COVID-19 virus. So this is discussion and action.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we discuss and take action on item number 12 as written.
We have a motion from Nancy. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mike. Cynthia, you're up.
My fellow council members, to extend this disaster declaration would be reckless and extremely detrimental to our business community and to the psyche of our residents. Helotes, as of May 8th, has had only 6 confirmed COVID cases, not deaths, just cases. This does not justify the draconian measures that could continue to be implemented by our mayor as emergency manager director, as directed by County Judge Nelson Wolf. The negligible amount of federal funds we would reap for extending this declaration would not offset the loss to our business community and to our sales tax revenue. While the declaration may have been necessary in March, since this was a new strain of contagious virus that no one in the medical community had knowledge about, the evidence to continue no longer exists. The initial reason given was fear that there would not be adequate hospital space or staffing for all the patients. That scenario never happened. Entire floors in our hospitals in this county are empty, with many layoffs of hospital employees. So now, to continue this travesty, some powers that be say that things must remain closed until everyone is tested or a vaccine is available. However, it is known that the cure rate for COVID-19 patients is 98.7%, even without a vaccine. The vast majority of people have mild symptoms that do not require hospitalization. Disaster declarations were meant to be implemented in times of natural disasters such as floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes. The powers that be decided to include a virus. This virus may be contagious, but it is not a disaster. The government's response to it has been a disaster. Please read the actual declaration that has such phrases as, quote, whereas COVID-19 continues to spread and to pose an increasing imminent threat of disaster, quote, whereas the City Council of the City of Helotes has determined that the declaration of local disaster and public health emergency must be extended for 60 days to respond quickly, prevent, and alleviate the suffering of people exposed to and those infected with the virus, as well as those that could potentially be infected or impacted by COVID-19, and quote, whereas a declaration of local disaster and public health emergency includes the ability to, among other things, compel persons to undergo additional health measures, including isolation, surveillance, quarantine, or placement of persons under public health observations, quotation closed. I cannot in good conscience vote for such a declaration. The premise of it is flawed. As you can see from, I have a handout of COVID cases and outcomes in Texas, Bexar County, and Helotes from May 13th and May 8th. Your chance of dying from COVID-19 in Texas is 0.04%. Your chance of dying from COVID-19 in Bexar County is 0.03%. And your chance of contracting the virus in Helotes is 0.05% with no known deaths. This disaster declaration tramples civil liberties and frankly goes against my oath as an elected official to uphold the Texas Constitution and the United States Constitution's Bill of Rights. I'm appealing to you, my fellow council members, to reject extending this disaster declaration. Let's be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And my fellow council members, if what I have said does not resonate with you, perhaps this will. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. President Ronald Reagan. Thank you.
Okay. It's me. Is it you? Yeah. Okay, I guess I just had 2 quick questions. When, this to me is, I mean, I understand all that Councilmember Massey is saying about all this, but to me, I would like to know what this net negligible amount would be that we wouldn't get from the government. Because to me, this is like, it's almost like we have to do this in order to keep getting funding. And if it's net, what amount, do you have any idea what it would cost us not to do this?
Well, I do not, because I do not know what the additional expenses are. So when you don't have the declaration, you can't apply to
Right.
apply for FEMA. We also are applying for an ACOG grant. That's about $20,000 to $30,000 for some equipment that we are going to, but we feel that we might need if this occurs again or any virus occurs again. And so they are allowing you to do a funding up to anything that you can see or purchase till January of 2021. So because their regulations is that you have to have a declaration to be able to apply for these fundings. Also, the Bexar County just got their CARES money, which they will distribute to the suburban cities. And so they have a criteria on theirs. They're working on that criteria. And so they just received the funds, and then we could apply for those funds.
We can apply for those funds without the declaration.
They have not yet. They are going to follow FEMA. I mean, it hasn't been set in stone, but usually what they do is follow FEMA regulations, and the FEMA regulations require the city to have a declaration.
Okay, that's all I had.
Alex?
Well, that was actually going to be my question as well, as to what I guess his Councilmember Bai's question was, what are we risking moving forward? And my question, I guess, to add to that is, what expenditures have we already had that were above and beyond what we might already do? Have we done much?
We have done. We've, even just equipping this area for the teleconferencing that falls into COVID. We've had some overtime because our part-time firefighters and EMTs and paramedics cannot work. A lot of the other cities have said, if you work for us full-time, you can't work part-time at another entity. And so that has caused overtime with us, because we do depend, the way our structure of our fire department is that we have part-time. We've also had things such as when we sanitize all the park area, sanitize the building here, that equipment, hand sanitizers. We're going to start court in June, so that, and we have to provide masks for the ones, the ones that want to have masks. So we have to have that available for them. So all those things have been expenses that we have incurred.
And these expenses will qualify all the way through December 31st. This is an open-ended disaster, and there are a lot of things that may qualify. And I'll add to that in just a minute on the governor's announcement on Monday.
And so the declaration that the Bexar County judge, which supersedes what we do as well, right?
Yeah, so even
that doesn't have any bearing on these
on the
applications
funding, right?
you're
So
referring to.
the funding, you have to have your own declaration. But us being in the Bexar County, once they have a declaration, just like us being in Texas, we have to follow their executive order and declaration.
Even if it's unconstitutional.
We have to follow.
Yeah.
So make that last sentence again.
So because we are incorporated in Bexar County and the state of Texas, what their executive orders are, we have to follow. The reason we chose to do a declaration, because at first we weren't going to, because in other disasters you don't have to as a city sometimes, because the disaster happened very quickly, so that declaration didn't occur on the day that the disaster occurred. This being the way the virus was, the governor said and FEMA said, for you to be able to get certain funding, you have to do a declaration within the city.
And so I guess my next question then, based on the fact that they want this funding and the funding is going to be intended for the next months and months and months.
Correct.
Do you anticipate that even if this is passed for 2 more months, that we're going to come back in 2 months and want to continue to,
Depending on what the requirements of the executive orders and the declaration of the county, and we feel that we are not going to expend any more money, and we've already, like one of the grants, you apply by July 15th. You turn in the information then. Bear County has just started their CARES distribution, so that will happen within the next 60 days. After that, you're right, I can't tell you yes or no, but the way that the governor is trying to reopen Texas, I think that they will, and they might end it, terminate it, and so forth. We're able to terminate our declaration at any time, come back to council, so if we don't need it for the full 60 days because the executive order has ended, we're able to start now applying for funding and so forth, then we can come back and terminate that declaration.
A lot of it will depend on what Governor Abbott does.
Yeah.
On the 18th, we'll either extend the declaration, which we fully anticipate he will, although he's still going to be probably opening up more businesses and those kinds of things. But as an ongoing basis, we're going to remain eligible for reimbursable expenses through FEMA and other funding sources until this thing's over.
And that is dependent upon the date of the application that's put in, not necessarily this has to be extended in order to continue to receive funds going forward. I guess the question is, I'm trying to see the end game here.
Right. It is both, but if the executive order starts opening things up, starts terminating, and we're not going to have funds for COVID, then at that point, I would definitely, as city administrator, come and recommend us to terminate the declaration because there's no expenses associated with COVID at that time.
One final question, is there any requirement that this be done for 60 days? Or is it different length of time?
No, you can amend that and do it for 30 days. We just put 60 so that we cover anything in the next, so not having to come back to council in 30 days, but you can change that motion on the declaration.
Those are my questions at this time. Thank you.
Alan?
There are just so many unknowns in this decision to make. We don't know what funds are going to be available, what funds we would receive if we extended the order. We don't know what funds the government agencies would have for us, and we have to weigh that against if we don't do the extension, then businesses would start to open up and sales tax revenues would increase. We'd have to weigh that against what sales tax revenues we think we would receive. If we don't extend the order, we can open up businesses and let people start making money again.
Even if we don't extend the order, we still have to follow county and the governor. So it depends if their declaration, their executive orders allow those businesses to open up more. As a city, we can't make that decision.
And then what the Councilman Blue just mentioned, it's the 60 days then was kind of arbitrary. We could have said 30 days or 15 days or anything such as that, any lesser number of days, fewer number of days. Okay, so then the decision, in my mind becomes, do we go the 60 days and maybe we won't need it, or should we go a lesser number of days, fewer number of days, and then if we need more, we could come back and extend that. So the question is, which comes first? Is it better to ask for more, not need it, or ask for a small amount if we need more time later to extend that? So
we just chose 60 days. It's a fairly short period of time. It keeps us from having to come back. But as soon as the governor and the county judge look like they're going to lift their executive orders and declarations, and we would do the same, just bring it to you to terminate it.
So
but it's your option to do whatever it is you want to do.
Well, no, I understand. again, it's a difficult decision to make. 60 days to me, Mr. Mayor, is a long time. I would prefer a shorter period of time, and if we need more time, we can extend that. And to me, we're at the mercy of the state and the county.
We don't see them shortening it, but it's your discretion what you want to do.
Okay, that's all I have.
Paul, anything?
Yeah, I'm kind of in favor of renewing it. I don't think we're out of the woods yet. This epidemic is on a bell curve. So if you have 100,000 die up to the peak, then you're going to have 100,000 die on the backside. If the data I was looking at a couple days ago, if you the United States is still on an uptick. It looks like it's coming down, but if you back out the data from New York, because New York was so catastrophic, we're still on an incline. So I think the disease is still, the virus is still spreading. I think we're not out of the woods yet on this.
Okay. That it, Paul?
That's it.
Okay. On the call Monday with Governor Abbott, he announced something that's referred to as the Corona Relief Fund, whereby $11.24 billion came to Texas. 45% of that was made available to local jurisdictions or local governments. $3.2 billion went directly from the state to 12 counties. That's the 12 counties in Texas that have populations of more than 500,000, and went to 6 cities, each of those cities being populations of more than 1 million. So the rest of the money is available directly from the state by smaller populated counties and cities with less than 1 million population. The catch is on the 12 counties, 500,000 or more that receive the funding already from the state, and that's at $55 per capita. That county then is responsible for dispersing it to the cities that are within that county. The question becomes whether or not the county will use the same criteria to disperse to the suburban cities. In other words, figuring our estimated population at 9,000 at $55 per capita is about 495,000 that we would be allocated in funding. 20% of that, the way we understand it, and Marion is verifying this, is all we need to do is certify that we are eligible. There's a form online through TDM, the Texas Division of Emergency Management, through the CARES Act Corona Relief Fund, where we can do that. We're working on doing that. However, we do have to provide all documentation and all receipts and all the other things that you would normally have to provide if you're asking for reimbursement. So this is just one more funding source that we might have available to us through the state and through Bexar County, and that's why it's important, one way or another, to keep this declaration in effect. As Marion says, it's a necessary item that we have to be able to be eligible for these funding sources, pretty much.
Yes, that is correct. And there's some, the National League of Cities has been actually pushing the federal government to even give direct funding to the smaller cities instead of the ones that went to the county, because the county might attempt to use that for their, a portion of it for their facility, and there not be enough for all the suburban cities. So that's something that's coming down. It hasn't been completely voted on, but that is something that we could also be eligible for.
Yeah, in other words, there's nothing in the act that requires the 12 counties that receive the funds direct from the state to share on an equal basis with the suburban cities that are within that county. San Antonio was one of the 6 cities. They got their own funding at 55 per capita, whereas the county got theirs. We're responsible for working with the county to get ours. Okay, Cynthia, any follow-up questions or discussion?
I have a few. So, since the disaster declaration, you said it goes retroactively from January to what, I guess this one that's still going on ends May, whatever.
May 27th.
So you could apply for funds based on the disaster declaration for those 5 months.
Through FEMA, but the ones like for Bear County that hasn't released the criteria, and for the ACOG grant, with Bear County, we're not sure what their eligibility is, but for the ACOG grant, when we send in the application, we have to show that we're still under a declaration of disaster.
And yet you still can't tell us how much money that for the last 3 months that have been expended for COVID, and what exactly are the funds that are being used for COVID?
The funds that were being used are
in here in the city. What's
that's what I was saying, that some of the overtime that we've done for the firefighters, because our part-time employees cannot come and work because they work for a different city. Also, any expenses that we've had for providing the mask for our employees, because we can't use the PPE ones that the fire department gets. Also, all we've provided extra cleaning supplies for the area. We do the sanitizing spray. We've also sanitized and cleaned all the park and open areas. So all those expenses, extra medical supplies that the fire and EMS has determined that was because we have actually exported some COVID positive patients to, we've done 1 or 2 that were in the city, and we took them, or they were potential and they were being tested. So if they were potential because they had symptoms, we have to go in and clean all the ambulance, police cars, and so forth like that. So we've had some incidents where people were either positive or thought they had the virus and might have come back negative later on. But in the meantime, we have to disinfect everything.
Well, we're doing that as a preventive measure anyway.
Correct.
So it's everything, and we're finding out more and more. Each one of these will have its own qualified items for reimbursement. So it's just a matter of we're going to have some of these working simultaneously.
Correct.
I do have another question. This is probably more for the mayor. One of the things that was mentioned in your executive summary for this particular item was the city has taken measures to close and cancel events through May 31st, and we're all aware of that. Are you also, if we extend this, are you going to consider canceling June marketplace and July marketplace?
We've looked at, I asked Marion and Andrea and Susan to look at the possibility of doing the June marketplace on a reduced number of booths so that we can maintain social distances and all those things that are required to be eligible. And Marion just sent me an email today saying they probably cannot get the June, but we're shooting for July 4th.
Well, I mean, they're opening up all of these markets all over Texas. I just found out about Conroe, which is the biggest flea market in Texas, and they've been going on for 120 years. And they hadn't had theirs the last couple of months, and they're having it at the end of May, actually. And they're doing all of the things. They actually have theirs in covered pavilions, and then an outside. But they're doing all of the necessary items. And I just do know that businesses in Old Town are very concerned about not being able to do that, especially since it's outside, and since the virus can't last for more than 6 seconds in the sunlight. I just really don't understand why you cannot do this in June. And what I'm saying is this is going to give you the authority to just go ahead and arbitrarily make these kinds of decisions. And I just I don't understand the decision making and why you would do that.
It's what we're capable of, and I rely on Marion and the staff. If they say that they can't staff it, and for whatever other reasons they have, then that's what we're looking at.
You can't staff it because of what reason?
We have part-time people, so we've actually contacted them, and no one is available in June to run it. So that's the staff. So we have event staff people that would come in, and they are part-time. None of them are available in June to do it, or be able to feel safe, and they want to work it. So we have to now do some applications or to find people to come actually staff that. Because everything's set up, like you said, in Conroe, there's pavilions already preset. These have to be, we have to designate the areas and help the vendors get all the booths and the tents and everything set up. We have to, it's not a marked pavilion like some of the flea markets and so forth where they're already marked booths. These are just within open areas or parking lots. And so we have to mark them, we have to do that. We have to make sure that we have enough staff to be able to run the marketplace.
And these staff members, they're not doing it because they're afraid?
No.
They just said they were not available when we contacted them.
Keep in mind, all of these staff members, we pay overtime for this. There's a lot of moving parts in these events, especially marketplace. And again, here I'm relying on Marion, and we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks. I asked her to put the plan together where we could make it work if we could in June. And she's telling me that they can't get the staff and we can't get the registrations up and running. It's going to take some modification on the online registration. There's a lot of work to running marketplace. We have a dedicated website and dedicated people to that. And if Marion's telling me we can't do it, then we're probably not going to do it.
Okay.
Bert?
Okay, getting back to the agenda item. The extent of the days is 60 days doesn't make any difference because we can always not stop the declaration whenever the county stops theirs.
Yes.
And no matter what we do, we have to, in my mind, we have to play the game. We have to in order to get these funds, and it's not a negligible amount. So in my mind, I mean, I'm all for this just the way it's written.
Alex?
I'm torn. I know that we have a meeting that's coming up on the date of this, or actually the day before this expires. 30 days would add 2 more council meetings to it. What I see is I'm not interested in putting the citizens at an expense, which of course would happen because we're going to incur expenses simply because of the governor and or county judge's declaration. I'll be honest, I was working from home. I get to see more of those 6 o'clock meetings and briefings of the county judge, and I can tell you that the one I saw a couple days ago did not lead me to believe that the county judge is going to have any interest in sharing that money with the local municipalities, because he was on stage lamenting the fact that he would have to even consider the local ones, because Judge Wolf basically said, we're incurring all of the expenses, all of the people are within our system, our hospitals, our jail, our this, our expenses are ours, and the little communities out there, they're not suffering like we are at the county level and at the city level, and that's his opinion. And I don't think we're really going to get a whole lot of generosity in dividing that to, if you said $55 per capita, I think that's probably very unlikely, which means that we may have to very well rely on some of the grant money that is available to us. And if the requirement to extend this is the only source of what may very well be tens of thousands of dollars in expense, or put that back on the shoulders of the citizens, which is going to have to happen eventually, right? Because when we spend money in one place, we have less to spend somewhere else. And especially when we don't know what the impact is on our revenues as a result of this, which I know these funds aren't designed to replace those, but they're going to be part of our budget. With all sympathy to the event, I think that reluctantly we're going to have to look at extending it. My only question, and I would welcome the opinion, is whether we need to do it for 60 days or do 30 and come back in 30 days. It's just a couple sheets of paper and another vote. That's kind of, those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Alan?
I agree with Councilman Blue that I'd like to reconsider the number of days, and would it be appropriate for me to make a motion to amend the motion from 60 days to 30 days.
Well, we can see if the motion maker would like to, and if she won't, then you have the prerogative to do that. Paul, anything? Paul? He's still on?
He's on. He mentioned he was having some technical difficulties on his end.
Okay. I would like to just point out, again, just for some kind of clarification here, that locally, we have not implemented any restrictions. We've been, it's important to understand that we're the bottom rung of the ladder as a municipality. We're subordinate to the county judge's executive orders and the governor's executive orders. We have not done anything other than cancel the events and cancel the brush pickup up to this point. So we have done absolutely nothing, draconian or otherwise, in creating any additional restrictions over and above what the county judge has done. However, we are obligated to follow that executive order by the county judge, like it or not. And we don't necessarily agree with everything either. But dadgummit, it's an executive order from the county judge, and by law we have to comply with it. And so we can have our own opinions, but typically you just accept the fact that it's something that we are having to do, and that's what we're doing. So again, it comes down to dollars. I think we've been asked a couple of times. And last time we talked, right now we're looking at somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 probably in overtime, PPEs, the extra equipment that we're having to buy, the disinfecting of all the buildings, maintaining just the sanitary conditions, getting court back in order. Anything that we can tie to COVID-19 is, in our minds right now, an eligible expense to turn in on these reimbursement grants. Some of them are 100%, some of them are 75%, but it's money back in our pockets. And so you have to decide, do you want us to be eligible for the funding? As Marion said, she's keeping up with this, or not. Because once the declaration ends, that's pretty much the end of the cycle where we can obtain funding. Right?
That is correct.
Okay. So, Cynthia, any follow-up?
Yes, some of these orders from Bear County have been, the Attorney General has written back and said that they were exceeding their authority. So what is the city doing about things like that?
Well, I know that the county, that just happened a couple of days ago, and the county and the county judge and COSA mayor actually responded back, saying that they're having a response to that, and they're going to have an opinion, I believe, in the next couple of days on if some of those things were still valid or not.
And they're going to have to duke it out with the Attorney General.
Yes.
Until then, the executive order stands,
Yes.
until the Attorney General takes some kind of action. So it's just part of the process, you know, and a lot of people don't like a lot of things about it, but what is. And that's just the way it operates, and that's the condition we're in. It's extraordinary times. Nobody's ever been through this kind of stuff before. So we're just following the process that we have to process to be sure that we at least get reimbursed as much as we can as a result of this COVID-19 thing and all of the executive orders. You're looking at 21 from Governor Abbott and 7 executive orders from Nelson Wolff, County Judge Nelson Wolff. And there's probably going to be more coming, because it's not going to be a switch turned that we can see and they're going to say, okay, life is back to normal. It's going to be a continued phase out. That's why they're telling us it's probably going to stay open until December 31st at a minimum. Paul, you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you're up. Anything?
No, I don't have anything else to add. I've just been listening. Thank you. The audio's not really all that great, but that's okay. That's my deal.
Okay. So Cynthia, did you have any follow-up?
I would like to make an amendment to make it 30 days rather than 60.
Okay. You want to second that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, any discussion on that? Okay, so, no further discussion. The amendment is to change the duration of the executive order, or the declaration to 30 days instead of 60, so you'll adjust the dates,
Well,
and then we'll just come back if we need to in 30 days.
yes.
So we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
You're voting against your motion?
Yes. Can I not do that?
Not really. It's Robert's rules. But for you, we'll let your nay vote stand. So we have one nay vote by Massey.
So you're Paul, you voted.
Paul, did you say yes or no?
Yeah, I voted yes.
Okay. All right. That finishes up our agenda. So if there are no objections, we'll adjourn. Any objections? We're adjourned. It is 9 p.m.